שלום עליכם וברוכים בואכם ללקחי שפת עברים. שלום לכם. בטרם החלנו את הלקח, אנוכי חפץ לברכו. ברוך אתה אבויה, אלוהינו אדוננו, אלוהי אבותינו, אלוהי אברהם, אלוהי יצחק ואלוהי יעקב. כל הכבוד וההוד לך. אנו פתחנו את ליבנו לקבל ולהשכיל בחוכמתך, בדעתך ובתבונתך, בשם ישוע. אמן.
The Hebrew Vowels, Part 2, General Principles. In Hebrew, like other languages, have short vowels, long vowels, and diphthongs. However, in Hebrew, besides this, there are some vowels that are extremely short, that they are almost indistinguishable. There are three primary vowel sounds, a, e, and u. These may in fact be either long or short. So let's start with the pure long vowels. Pure or naturally long vowels are long because they cannot be reduced under any circumstance. The length and quality can never be diminished. Diphthongs are considered pure long vowels. They are syllables which etymologically would involve the diphthongal formation. So you have I, which then was from the original I. You have O from the original ow. And it's represented here with the e and o. So here is an example. You have Goliath here, then you have Goliath, and then it's finally reduced to Goletho. Another example, Hoshiv, Hoshiv, and Hoshiv. So the vowel O is not always diphthongal in origin, but may be long in its own right, like the Arabic a, as in shalom, salamu. Then you have kotel and katilu. So here are the pure long vowels. You have a, e, o, u, e, I, o, u, and the pure a are least common. Okay, so they are unchangeable, thus they are indicated by the circumflex accent here that you see them. So anytime I write a pure long or a naturally long vowel, I will have the circumflex over that vowel. So moving on to tone long vowels. Tone long vowels are as follows. You have A, E, and O. I and U, E, U are never represented as tone long vowels. Okay? So these are written with a long mark because they are pure long. The I and the U only. Okay? So it's never like this. So tone long vowels are not long by nature, but rather long because the position they are in, when their place shifts, they no longer remain long. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. And remember, when you subscribe, click on all so you can be notified when there is a new video posted. It is prudent to remember that the tone or accent is meant the stress of the voice, but the tone syllable is the syllable of the word on which the stress falls. Here's a perfect example of that. You have the noun present and the verb present. So here you have on pre, you have the tone for the noun, and the verb, you have the tone on sent. So present rather than present. Okay? There is a general rule in Hebrew, and it's that the tone is usually the last syllable. Okay? So in Hebrew, a long vowel has the effect of lengthening. So I will give you an example. So you have here davar, okay? Da is the ah here is tone long. The ah here in davar, in var, is also tone long. Okay, it's not pure long because it can be reduced. Pure long or naturally long vowels could never be reduced. Okay, so both are tone long. The latter is long because being the last syllable, okay, right here being the last syllable, it bears the accent. And the former here is only obliged to be long because it falls immediately before the tone syllable. So the first vowel needn't be a, it can be e or o, but it must be long. So I want you to always remember that the I and U must be pure long. They are never tone long vowels. So here is an example of that. So we have the word qotel, and the O in ko is pure long. That's why it has the circumflex here. And then the E in tel is tone long. That's why it has the flat sign above the E. So there is a difference. The O, notice it's the same, but here there's a reduction. So telin, talin. Okay, so tel becomes talin in the plural. So the A right here almost vanishes. It does not completely vanish. Now in modern Hebrew this will be kotlin instead of kotelin. Okay? It's not supposed to vanish completely, and it's not closed completely. Again, we'll get into syllables in a separate video. So there is a difference. This is pure long. It stays the same. Notice the ko stays the same. The the tsere here, becomes the shoah, and then you have the yod and mem to complete the plurality of the word. So that's all for tone long. Now for indistinct vowels. So in Hebrew, the tone can be reduced whenever possible before the pretone to a swift and somewhat indistinct sound, like in the word the. The E is almost non-existent. Okay? It's represented by a small e, the small e right here, above the line. So you have davar, which becomes devarim. Okay? And here I just broke it up to show you the syllables. So davar becomes devarim. And notice the E here, it's small and above the line. So the last syllable has, as usual, the tone. Okay, so here is the tone, the var. Okay, the tone is on var. The pretonic syllable has a tone long, which this is the pretonic syllable here. This is tonic. I'll better do it here. This is tonic here, and this is pretonic. So var is tonic, da is pretonic. And the original long vowel A, the long vowel A here, long in the var, because it was pretonic. Now that it's two places from the tone, so it's two places from rim now is the tone, tonal syllable. Okay? So this is the tone syllable. It's two places, 1, 2. From the tone vanishes into an indistinct E sound. So it's eh, and very, very short. Eh. Not eh, but eh. Okay? So in modern Hebrew, this will be dvorim. So it's not even spoken. In classical or biblical Hebrew, it's devorim. So it sounded a bit more. That's why it's indistinct and not completely indistinct. Okay? So in words like kochav, right here, it will be impossible for the O to be tone long. It is pure long or naturally long, because it cannot be reduced. So it would never be kewachavim. Okay? Kochav becomes kochavim. Notice how the O is still there. Now, I will cover this in a separate video, but just to give you some type of indication that the wow, when you see the wow and it's consonantal, it will always be pure or naturally long. It's never tone long. That's in biblical Hebrew. In modern Hebrew, it's different. Okay? The rules have been changed. Just in writing. But once you see this wow and it's consonantal, it will always be pure. So this could never be reduced. However, to the contrary, if you have here boker, the O here is tone long and it's not pure long. It can be reduced. So it becomes the indistinct bet korim. Bet korim, okay? So boker to bekorim. So I'll be very brief. Aleph, He, Het, and Ayin are known as guttural letters. Okay, so when you have the indistinct sound, the shoah, added to the guttural letters, it is less distinct than the full vowel, but more distinct than the shoah. Okay, and it's usually in the beginning of a word. So the gutturals can take a shoah, but it's not at the beginning of a word. It's never at the beginning of a word. So it's transliterated as the E, E, and O above the line. So it's very tiny to indicate that it's still a sound. It's indistinct, but not so distinct. So holi, emor, and hamor. Okay, notice how it's transliterated here. It's above the line. Next, we'll talk about pure short vowels. There are 3 primary short vowels: the A, the I, and U. In fast or in careless speech, the A could be deflected into E. Catch for catch. A could be deflected into I, instant for instant. The I could be deflected into E, kitchen for kitchen. U could be deflected into O. The short vowels are therefore A, E, I, O, and U. But the three primary short vowels are A, I, and U. And it's transliterated without any accent mark. Okay? So last but not least, we have the matriz lecciones, indicated by three consonants here to indicate vowels. So we have he, wow, and yod. Remember, Hebrew syllables must begin with a consonant at all times. So if these letters begin or appear at the beginning, so if the he, the wow, and yod are appearing at the beginning of a syllable, they are consonantal. They will, with one or two little exceptions, be vocalic at the end. Okay? And we'll get into this soon. For a side note, the fricatives never begin a word. So vet, rimel, valid, chaf, fe, and thou, you'll never see it at the beginning of a word. Bet, gimel, dalet, kaf, pe, and tau are plosives, and they begin a word. Okay? So even the wow, meaning an, is not pronounced u, because why? Syllables must begin with a consonant. But it's rather wu, as in wulechol, wu vilvavecha, wu vabait, wu devora. Okay? And not ulechol, u vilvavecha, u vabait, u devora. But rather wu. Okay? So isolated, the wow is pronounced we. The shoah is under it. When prefixed to a word, it becomes wu, because the vowel sign is now shuruk. Another example would be yom. The yod is consonantal, and the yod in mi is vocalic. Remember, if at the beginning, it's consonantal. If at the end, primarily vocalic. Okay? So here we have another example. Him, the he here, is consonantal, but ma, it's vocalic. Okay? Remember, primarily it's vocalic if it's at the end. So when the he is at the end of a word, it's primarily vocalic. It constitutes a vowel with or without the he. It is like the e in the word have. So either you see it or you don't. You see it or you don't. It still doesn't matter. Okay? So the system on the right is an older system, this system here of writing, whilst the left is the Masoretic system. And I will discuss this further in a video called Masoretic and Textual Systems. Okay, so either you have the he at the end of a word or not. It still is vocalic. Either you see it or you don't. You should pretend that you do see it if you never see it, if it's at the end of a word. Okay? Here is another example. Mahpecho. The he here is vocalic. Okay, so it's a vowel. And the he here, even though it's closed, this syllable is closed, it represents a consonant because it's at the beginning of a word. Mahpecha. Okay? So the original form is a verb, hafach, and then the mem is added to be either who, what, which is. That prefix is usually added to words. Okay, so ma. This is closed syllable. Even though it's closed, it still represents a consonant. And here, this is open. This is not closed, but this is actually open. It represents a vowel. So either the hey is there or not, it's still going to be open. We'll go over this in another video. So the hey represents chiefly the long a, as in ma. Yod represents the long I or long e, li, or le. And the wow represents the long o or the long u, as in lo or lu. So you have a, e, I, o, and u. You have it all here in these three consonants that represent vowels. Another note would be that the he, wow, and yod representing vowels, these consonants, will always be long vowels, and not long tone long vowels, but rather pure, unchangeably long or naturally long vowels. Okay, in modern Hebrew that has changed, and it's because they hardly use vowels to indicate a word. Okay, so ma here is pure long, li pure long, le pure long. So when you see the yod represented here, it is pure long. When you have the wow represented here, it is pure long. You cannot change it. Okay, so there are times where you would not see the matriz lectionis representing a pure long vowel. That is not too difficult to differentiate, but once you get used to the language, you'll know what is pure long and what is tone long. Okay, but the yod, wow, and hey could never be represented as tone long vowels. So the hey represents, as a rule, long a, but it does not follow that every long a should be represented by the hey. So this distinction is reserved only for a long a at the end of a word. At the end of a word, as in susa. The a here is pure long. The wow here, so you have the he, that's pure long. You have the wow, that is pure long. So it's indicated by the circumflex, so it is a pure long vowel. It cannot ever be reduced. That is why the plural is susot. This is a pure long vowel. This, remember the wow in matriz lectionis is always going to be pure long. Here it still has not been reduced. It has not changed at all. To the contrary, you have davar. This is a tone long word completely. So you have the tone long vowel here and tone long vowel here. Davar. Okay? So it's different in qamim. You have the A here, which is pure long, and then you have the I here, which is also pure long. Now remember, I said that the hey does not need to represent a pure long A at all times, only at the end of a word. So notice that here, this is pure long and is not represented by the hey. It just means that it cannot be reduced. Same thing, you have the yod here that represents, remember the matrix lectionis, it represents a pure long vowel. It can never be reduced. So kamim. E, I, O, and U regularly represents a consonant at the end of a word. So kami, kame, kamo, kamo. So broadly speaking, the tone long vowels are not represented by vowels. Tone long are not. Pure long are. So for E, you have kame. For I, you have kami. For O, you have kamo. And for U, you have kamo. Okay? So the tone long vowels are never represented by he, wow, and yod. So levav will never be written this way. Enov will never be written this way. However, in modern Hebrew, it is fine. Okay? Not the top. I've never seen the top. I've seen the bottom, though. So enov here, if you didn't see the sarei or the komes, it will be written this way. And it's just so that things are more fluid for the reader. So as soon as you see it, you recognize it. That's all that it is. So a lot of these rules went out the door in modern Hebrew. So next we have boker. It is written this way in modern Hebrew. If you take away the vowels, this is how it looks. Okay? So one would say, well, this could be bakar, this could be boker. How do you figure out, or how do you distinguish the word boker from bakar? It's only by context, okay? So I can look at this word and I can say, well, it could be bakar or it could be boker, because there's no context. It's just a word by itself. Boker, however, this here makes it easier for me to distinguish what it is. However, this is incorrect. Incorrect biblically. Modern Hebrew, this is fine. So remember, the matrix lectionis can never, ever indicate that this is a tone long vowel. Okay? It's only pure long. So if this was the case, it could never be bekorim. It'll be bokerim. Okay? It will never be bekorim. Bokerim, yes. Because the wow here, indicating that it's a O, and not an U, but an O, is pure long. But in modern Hebrew, this is actually tone long, so this will be incorrect. So let's put that back. Boker, boker, bekorim, meaning mornings. Okay. So we can take a step back and look at this word, kochav. We saw it before. And kochav, the singular form is star. The plural form is stars. they're both pure, long voweled. Okay, so none of these vowels can be reduced at all. That is why it's written with a circumflex, both the O and the A. I would also like to add that you're able to write pure long vowels in varying ways. So you do not need the matriz lecciones in order to write a word. So if you look here, quitor, quitor, and quitor. Now I said quitor and I didn't say quitor. Quitor. Okay, so it's long I. So quitor is a short I and there's a dagesh. There is a hold. Okay, I didn't say quitor, I said quitor. So quitor with the yod and the waw. Quitor with the waw and the yod is wanting. You would not see the kof, yod, tait, and then resh. You won't see that. Usually the waw is represented and the yod is not. And then here, the one that is more difficult is quitor without the yod and the waw. So without any type of indication with the Masoretic vowels, you have it here. Quitor, this is beautiful. I'm able to recognize what this is. Quitor, this is still recognizable, and this not so much. So this could be koter, this can be kotor, this can be ketor, I'm not sure. But with proper context, it makes things easier. It doesn't make things easy completely, but it does make things easier. Okay, so these two are the best, and usually in modern Hebrew it's written this way. Okay, there are sometimes that you'll see the Masoretic vowels written maybe just one or two on a word. That's also to make things easier for you. But in modern Hebrew, it's usually written in these two ways. The first way more so than the second and third.
שלום וברכות טובות בעד שפותיכם.